I gotta record this because I
Oh, you can tell
never...
by the yeah.
Okay, you really don't need a whole lot of expertise when you're working with leather. You just need to know a few basic ideas. First thing you're going to need is a few basic tools. For example, a good anvil works really great when you're using get snaps or rivets. Then there's your small, about 8 to 12 ounce hammer. A good measuring tape.
Maybe you can use that as a stand.
Both sides. Makes it a lot easier when you're trying to lay it flat and then you're trying to get that number on this side or on this side. It's a lot easier. Trust me. I learned hard.
There you go.
Really, and I mean a really good pair.
Battles. Your opponent will give you that courtesy. No. Ooh, really nice. Excuse me, outside. Yeah. 2 o'clock for the battle. After tea, you bring the tea. I'll bring the biscuit. Okay. No headshot? No headshot. No headshot. And this is a bad thing to do. Unless I do. Then it's a trap. Then I would want. But this, don't bring your shield out to beat your opponent. A lot of people do that. Alright? Let us just say, because you're inexperienced, not because you're a bad player. Okay, go ahead and bring out your shield. Ready? Go. I didn't even hit your shield. I came over, I can come under. Keep it tight. So, with Ben, if he's coming at me, and I can't do this, what can I do? Everybody watch JP.
I'm supposed to be doing it correctly?
Yes. That's all you're going to do.
Okay. And in case you don't want to get your hands stained and everything because you have to work the next day, some good disposable gloves.
And those came from the 99-cent store.
Yeah, they're not expensive at all. And you always want to make the holes and stuff like that a nice good pair of hole punch. There's several different designs. I like this one right here because it's real easy. It's rotating. Now some of them actually have the various hole punchers on the handle itself that you interchange, just screw out, screw in. This one I find is a lot easier and a lot simpler. And believe it or not, for small, delicate work, when you're staining, Q-test works really good. Now, when you start with a project, first thing you want to do is think about is what you're going to make and how you're going to make it. Okay? And then you want to think about what type of leather you're going to make it with. So there's various types out there. You have the regular rawhide, like everybody has. You've got the more cloth suede type, if you're just going for looks versus actual function. And of course, comes in various colors. And once you decide what type of material you're going to use, then you want to go into the thickness of the material. For example, this material here is considered a 1 to 2.
Hey, that's the girl That's the girl in the Tifa cosplay I was talking
It's
to.
very flexible.
Oh, she asked me if you were okay.
Yeah.
I got a movie
Yeah,
You shouldn't sleep on the
Also,
floor.
Very flexible, easy to
And
fold,
again, we did go to
curl,
bed around
whatever
2
you want
o'clock
to
in
do
the
it.
morning, so
You'll
that's
find a lot of
understandable.
purses.
But
The
don't
purses
sleep
are
on
made
it.
by one or two.
I know you're
By
tired.
11.
But don't.
Then you
Was
get
tired.
into the thicker stuff. For example, this here is considered a 7 or 8. You'll notice it's a lot thicker, a lot stiffer, still a little bit flexible. But sometimes you get into material like this, you just consider a 9 and 10. It's a lot stiffer, a lot harder to work with.
Don't you dare tell me that, no.
Once you got into, calm me really here. Once you got into what material you want, then you also want to think about how you're going to fabricate it and what kind of accessories. You can make it one single type. For example, we got here a pattern for bracers. Very simple, very easy, very flexible. If you want to make it a little bit stiffer, you can take 2 of the same, and it makes it a little bit stiffer, a little bit thicker, more usable for support. Or you can really go fabric. Then you can use 2 different sizes of leather, which is what we're showing here. The bottom part would be considered like a 3 or 4 millimeter. The top part here, the black, is a 7 to 8. Still flexible on the hinges to go around your wrist, but very stiff and strong for if you're shooting archery, so that the string doesn't hit your arm. Now, you figured out what you're going to do, what type of material you're going to use, how you're going to use it. You've got your basic tools, and then you can figure out a pattern. Now, the pattern is going to take a little while, and you'll mostly a trial and error type deal. Okay. Sometimes you're going to mess up and you're going to wind up starting over again. Okay. I would strongly suggest you use like a paper pattern or a cloth pattern at first to make sure it all fits properly, and then transfer it over onto your leather. Leather is not cheap. Yeah, it can be very expensive. The thicker you get, the more it's going to cost. Okay. Now, some of the ways you can work with it is no minds. Okay, I'm used to talking without it. All right. Now, once you decided what you're going to do, what project you're going to make, your patterns, you got it all there, then you're going to start putting it together. Again, there's several ways you can do that. You can do it with rivets. Very simple. Something like this. So use what they call pop rivets. 2 pieces. You use your mallet. You use your anvil. Good to go. If you're going to use 2 different types, again, you can get a little bit more fancier. On this one here, we use regular just pop rivets to put the material here. This is very soft. This is 1 or 2 black latigo. And we use a stiffer backing so that when we're carrying swords, it doesn't flip-flop back and forth. But to make it easier to take it on and off, so that we don't have to take the belt off in order to get the soft we went with snaps. Various types of snaps. You can get a very plain type, or you can go, if you once you get used to you working with it, the real little fancy ones, like the Celtic ones that I use on this one. Okay? But I wouldn't advise going with something like this until you get good. These are regular snaps. These are very expensive once you start going through it. Okay? And a lot of times, you don't even have to use a whole lot of material, depending on what you want to do. For example, this here, you probably would look at it and say, ah, it's scrap material. I look at it and I say, ah, it's a cup holder. Using a good pair of scissors and using the tape measure, we're going to make a 1-inch wide strap. While he's doing that, any questions so far?
I'm going to pass out a couple of these so people can kind of, examine it a bit.
Yes, ma'am.
So here's the doubled. Here's one with the snaps.
See, this is what you can use for a bracer.
Just pass it along.
Eyelets.
This is a bracer.
Yes.
I know.
You do have punches specifically for eyelets.
Simpler version. Simple version,
Yes,
same thing.
you really get a good pair. You can use eyelets. Especially, for example,
nice.
if you ladies are going to make
Here's
ponds
always nice.
or corset. You know, I know you see a lot of them over there in the dealer's room, corsets and everything like that, and they're actually not that hard to make. Again, you're looking at the thickness of they're reinforced. It's either a second layer of leather, or sometimes they'll use, what is it, plastic strips?
Components?
Yeah.
So rodents can be made out of all kinds of various things, plastic, metal,
Actual whale bone.
actual whale bones, you go back far enough in history.
Okay. I suggest that nowadays you go with a plastic strip, which you can find pretty much anywhere at a hobby shop. Just make sure it's flexible enough, but it's thick enough so that it doesn't break on you the first time you wear it. Of course. Okay. And also, if you're going to do that, put it like pockets on the inside, where it opens up, where you can actually take the strips out in case they break, or in case you want to change it over. A lot of times you're using material, and you'll wind up not only breaking, but sometimes it's going to get wet, or you'll want to re-dye it or something like that. So it's a lot easier if you can take the plastic strip floating out of it in order that you can re-dye it. Dye and plastic really don't mix very well. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
What do you use
For stitching? Okay.
I guess his hand soft. Because you can't pierce that with a sewing machine.
Okay, so it's fine. Okay, well, that's one. All right, I did bring my stitch with me today, but one way you can do it is you get the 2-stitch punch. You get yourself whatever material you're going to use, and you get yourself a scrap piece or a back, because you don't want to go ahead and go through the leather onto the plate or anything hard. It's going to dull the point. You're going to wind up using a jeweler's file or something like that to hit your point back. You want a nice sharp point. So you're going to go through your material into your scrap material, so that when you see the point, that's it. You're going to do it individually, which is really good for doing curves or corners, like on couches, purses, anything like that. Okay? If you're doing a straight line and you're in a hurry, get yourself one of these.
a hand chiseled plier. Actually, move the one after that. Okay, so I'd like to get that off there.
Okay, this particular one does 3 holes at a time. Okay? But you need a good upper arm strength to do it. Depending if you're going through a thick leather or a very thin one. For example, 1 or 2 millimeters, no problem. Flip, 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 flip. If I'm going through something like a 7 or 8, it's going to be a little bit harder to do. Well, what's nice about these guys is you do the first set, and since this is 3, I'm going to take the first one, I'm going to put it in my 3rd hole, and do the next 2, and the next 2, the next 2. That way I know for sure I've got evenly spaced holes in between. Okay? And then I'm going to take my picture, which I don't have. Note to self, bring this picture tomorrow.
If you come back tomorrow for the other one, we'll have this picture.
Okay.
Otherwise, get on our mailing list and he can send you it.
Very simple to stitch. It's like a really long needle with a handle, and it has a roll of string. And the string goes up through the center of the needle, goes through an eye at the end, almost like a sewing type needle. And what you want to do is you put it through the first hole, take your string, pull it all the way through, 1.5 times the length that you're going to actually stitch. Okay? Because what you're going to do is you're going to pull it back through the first hole, take it to the second, bring it up through the second hole, and as you pull it back down, it's going to make a little loop where the string's at. You're going to take the other end, you're going to put it through that hole, pull it all the way through, and when you pull the needle back through the leather, it's going to make a sewing stitch. Anybody doing sewing in here? Okay. So you know how the needle and the thread works. Same concept with leather, except a lot of times you do it by hand, unless you want to pay about $600-800 for a leather sewing machine. Make it really 5 seconds, it's done. But I don't think none of us can afford one right now, especially for little projects we do once in a while. Unless you really want to get into it, then yes, it's worth the cost. Okay. But you just keep doing that all the way through, and once you get back to the beginning, you come back through the same hole, you loop it through one more time, and then you pull it all the way through.
I know this. That's how
And
I
you knot it off. But you want to make sure you knot it off on the inside of your project so it's not showing on the outside for everybody to see. Okay? That's the easiest, simplest way of stitching. They also have what's known as a wrap. Instead of the holes being straight like this one here is, they're on a 45-degree angle. And you're using almost like a wide strap. You ever see wallets that have a little wrap going around the edges and everything to keep it going? Okay, that is mostly for looks, because if you look closely, you'll see that the seams on your 2 pieces of leather have actually been glued together. And then they'll make the holes and they'll do the wrap. And how they finish that up is when you get back to the beginning, you slip it through underneath at least 2 or 3 of the loops you already done. And that will hold it in place. Supposedly, a lot of times when I do that, I'll take a little bit of super glue and I'll put it on the underside before I pull it tight, and then I'll just trim it off, the excess. That way I know it's not going to wrap. Yes, there was a hand over here.
Yes, I saw a seal at the end of the leather. What is that exactly?
A what?
Oh, like the edges.
happy about this one.
Okay. So we're looking at,
If you can come up and point it to me. We'd love to answer the question, but we don't know the thought beside it. Quite sure.
It's like, instead of it looking like that, it's finishing
oh, that's because I just didn't dye it. Afterwards, I found out that when I did the snaps, the one snap is slightly off from the other one. So, and it kind of bulged there. So in order to give it a little more flexibility, I'm shaking it. On your gobble, slip through. Very simple, very easy. Doesn't have to be what they call the leaf pattern, which like what this one is. It can be round, it can be tapered, whatever you want to do it. If you want to throw a jewel on there, you can do that very simply. Now, once we got some spread. So, what I would normally do is take the strap, okay. What you want to do there, again, is just make a simple one, is using a, you can put a top rivet on top, put a snap on the bottom, loop it up through, and voila, you got yourself a 50-cent tumbler, or goblet, or whichever one you want to carry. Now, if you go to the Renaissance Fair, they're going to charge you $4 for 50 cents worth of Much more affordable for us poor people. Now, if you want to get fancier, I'll pass this one around. This is one actually the wife got 20 years ago.
Oh, God, at least.
Ladies. This is when she used to have a booth at North Fair when it was in Black Point.
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Closer to 30.
It's actually one single piece of leather. What they've done is they've got a split on one side, looped it through, and then they stitch on a big heavy-duty button. They put a little bit of lamb's wool on the inside to protect the goblet or tanker that was using. And they use this a little piece of leather thong here for loop. As it loops around. Now they made it a little bit more fancier. As you see, as you take a look at it, you'll see the design on there is actually a stamp that you can get and pass on there. And how you stamp things like that is you wetten the leather. You make the leather better. You make the leather. You make the leather wet. And while it's still wet, you've got your stamp using a hammer and a mallet. And you just lay it on your handle there and you hit it as hard. It makes an indentation, and when the leather dries, you still have your pattern. And the way to distinguish your pattern so it shows a little bit better, you have various types of dyes you can use. You want to use, for example, that one there has a dark brown dye all the way through. And then what they've done is they took a different type of dye for the indentations. They applied it and then they wiped it off right away. When it dries, it shows the back of the indentation comes out and stands out. Whereas the higher point will stay the same color as the diamonds. Very simple, again, basic.
She was
leather
talking about
work.
this thing right here.
Not
This is
expensive,
dying.
anything like that. Yes, sir.
It's important to
Depending on the size of material, if it was something that small, yes, I would use a Q-tip, or I would probably get myself what they
Hardly
call
noticeable, I
a
think.
.001
noticeable, I think.
paintbrush. And maybe like
Hardly noticeable, I think.
Well, he says this is bad.
And a big magnifying glass, because I think, and you would go in there and just do it very slowly.
So, plotters, larger things, Q-tip, medium things, imaginary paintbrush, really tiny things.
Like about 1/10 the size of a Q-tip. Okay, any other questions so far? Yes, sir.
Do you recommend boiling the oil and margarine for structural things like the belt clip or this sword holder?
Boiled leather?
Did you ever do that?
Yes, I have. There you have to be very careful because if you're dealing with hot oil, or a lot of times in the old days they didn't have their oil so much, they used wax. Especially like, for example, the Roman lorica, because the metal gets really hot when we're down in the middle Mediterranean area like that, or they're in Greece conquering all those countries down there. What they've done is boiled leather that they wore instead of metal. Metal actually didn't come out in lorica until basically around the 10th, 11th century. Up until about the 6th or 7th century, it's all boiled leather. That's your basic infantry troop hat. Metal was very expensive and was only issued to officers. So it would be straps of leather that was either boiled or dipped in beeswax. And then they would have a dummy or a slave. Not that person. That's very smart. And basically, they would take the hot leather with the wax or the oil, and they would wrap it around the menu to get the different sizes. And if you've ever seen how many people were here last panel from Antwerp? Notice the gentleman that was wearing the metal bands?
Yes.
Okay, that is a Roman lorica. Now imagine that being made out of leather. And each of the strap is about an inch to an inch and a half wider as it goes up. Because one of the nice things about a lorica is when you travel with it, it all collapses like a camping car. One this side, the other this side, the other this side, the other. But it overlaps by a third to a half, depending on which side that you're making. So that when it's struck, you're not only just striking the one band, but you're striking the one on top and one below as well. But it's very flexible. How you can move and everything like that. Not like a full breastplate where you're limited to your flexibility. And boiled leather was very, very common used. A lot of times they'll use it like on ships, because again, salt water, metal, great stuff. You're sitting there all day long and just, pressing the dust on. Believe it or not, a different class. Chainmail. How they used to clean chainmail is they take a barrel half full of sand, throw their chainmail in there, and roll it down the hill. The chainmail rubbing up against the metal removes the rust. The easiest way to clean. You're not going to get in there chainmail with a toothbrush. Also, they have really nice patterns in the woods background on a really nice piece of leather. A lot of that is actually hand carved by using various types of tools to get the depth and the height. The angle. A lot of times it's an angle that you want to get as well. In a lot of your stamps, you'll find that if you want to get the depth like that, the one end is going to be thicker than the other end. And you need that down 45-degree slope there. And that really creates a totally different pattern than if it was flat. Yes, sir. For tooling? Oh, you can start out with, if you're going to use a stamp, you can do a 1 or 2. No problem. If you're actually going to tool it, using the hand tools and everything, I would not use less than 5 or 6 to pattern for example, a saddle. Okay, you're using a 9 or 10. It's going to be like, that big. So you can really carve away all your heart desire. Okay? If you're going to just use, for example, bracers, like what these are, okay, a stamp would be better. Or, you don't have to stamp. You can accessorize. For example, here's one of the patterns I made. I'm going to pass this around. If you notice, this part's been dyed. Kind of dull. It gets wet, the dye is going to bleed. Okay? So they have what they call sealant. It's white. Once you get your pattern done, everything, cover it, and then you're going to cover it with sealant. So one, it doesn't run on you like you're wearing a white shirt and it rains. Trust me, I've had that happen. I was very disappointed. I just bought the shirt one day. Well, I'm just dying in the color that it led into. Hey, I'm not wasting anything. I'm just putting it on a shirt now. Okay, so I'm going to pass this around. You'll see what the difference is. And you'll also notice, too, that the side that has not been sealed is a lot more flexible than what the other side that has been. Sealing it like that actually strengthens and gives you a little more stiffness to your leather. So that's another way instead of doubling it. Or if you want, you can get yourself a nice little tracing pattern, for example, like this. And you can cut out your pattern straight out of here. Now, you can double it up, again, if you want to go for strength. Okay? Or, if you just want to highlight the pattern, if you really want it to stand out, you take yourself another piece of leather there and glue it onto the back side. And you notice it really stands out using a light color on the black back. If you want a little bit more subtle, wrong side. Still got a really nice pattern. It's more subtle. Not as easy to see, but personally, I like this one better.
Not yet. Just
It's there, it's
let me
pattern,
finish.
but it's subtle.
Finish it.
It doesn't stand out and hit you in the face. Two simple ways of doing the same thing without stamping or without tooling. Now, when you do a pattern like this, and you cut out like that, this is where really sharp recto knives and stuff like that come in handy. You want that really sharp point to get into the fine corners there, like that. Okay? Now, you don't always have to dye either. If you want, you have the dyes, and you also have the acrylic paint. Or even better yet,
Okay.
this one was done in water-based acrylic paint. This backing was done with a Sharpie. A Sharpie. Just took standard glue and
Sharpie.
Sharpie. There it is. Hard to get. Make sure you seal it. If you don't seal it, trust me, it's going to run.
Can you elaborate on the brands for sealant or dyes? Word Bible.
Tandy has got, most of my material I get from Tandy.
We don't work for candy, they don't give us
Florida, you gotta
kickbacks,
help me
don't
out
worry,
here.
we just like the company a lot.
They have a lot of good material. For example, a lot of their dyes now, they've gone from an oil base to a water base. So if you get it on your hands, it washes right off. No problem whatsoever. Okay? And it's eco-friendly. If it goes into the sewer or into the ground or whatnot, it's eco-friendly. That's their big thing they've done with a lot of their dyes in about the last 5 to 6 years. Before it used to be an oil-based paint, like the acrylic and stuff. In fact, even a lot of the acrylics you get nowadays for leather is a water base. It's not an oil base. So again, it's more economically friendly, as well as cheaper as well.
There's a question over there.
Yeah.
Do you use the water-based acrylic, or do you want, is there a specific kind, sorry, any water-based acrylics or a specific kind of acrylic?
Preferably, you look for the type that doesn't mention about leather, but also do say you can use it on cloth. Actually, white cloth and that stuff you use on sewing material. When it's used neck patterns and stuff like that, on canvas and things like that. Okay. But it does say it can be used on leather, it can be used on wood, it can be used on cloth. Problem with various types of paint like that, that's more heavy, is because leather is flexible, it has a tendency to crack. So you don't want really heavy acrylic, you want a thin acrylic, again, preferably a water base, so it kind of soaks in, but still gives you protection.
There's golden coats, that's why I use on my shield.
The water, like get in deeper, and also does that reduce crack?
Yes and no. Depends on the age of the paint. Over time period, a water-based paint, the water will evaporate because you've got auto open and you're only using a little bit at a time. Okay, so sometimes you want to add just a little bit more water back into it when it starts getting really thick and gooey. And shake it up, stir it up really good, that'll thin it back out. Okay, if it's a brand new bottle, don't worry about it because it's designed again to be flexible with leather. As long as it stays, it's going to be usable on leather, it's good to go. Using like acrylic house paint, it wasn't designed to last. Okay, question?
So we talked about what paints are good for leather, but what leather is good to paint on, or like color or dye?
Depending on what kind of dye or paint you're using, it doesn't matter the color of the leather at all. For example, this one here is a nice bright paint we used 2 years ago for our armor class on how to make ring tape. And you're not going to see it, so. And it was on sale. Very cheap price. Okay, but you notice, as an example, I went ahead and dyed one end to show you. It doesn't matter what the base leather is, you can dye. It will take a dye. This will take a dye, this will take a dye, there's no problem. This leather here actually started out a light color. And they just took the whole roll and just dumped it in a dye at the factory. It's factory dye. Okay. All right, so no problem. Yes, sir.
After you guys, how do you hang it up on the back?
When they do it, when they cut the leather and get it ready for and everything, you notice the imprint here? They put it on a big frame and they clamp it to keep it stretched and from shrinking. Because leather, as we all know, when it gets wet, it stretches. When it dries, it shrinks. Okay, and to prevent it from shrinking too much and getting the warp effect, so that nice and smooth when you want to work on it, they clamp it in place. And then they'll bring it into a dry room with very low heat. If you don't want the leather to dry fast. If it was a really hot room, it would. And we don't get it.
Like those braces, you paint it one side, you lay it flat, or have it pitched?
Depending on the size that I use, I do both. A lot of times, like if I'm doing a belt, I'll do both sides of the belt, and then I'll just hang it on the hook, let it hang down, let it dry. Because the leather on the belt, as you can see, is a lot thicker, for example, than this. This one, I did this. Notice a little bit, it did curve a little bit there because I just laid it flat. I had it on two little cans so that both sides would dry evenly because I did both sides at one time. And then I sealed it. Okay? So you might get a little bit of this because, but I'm not worried about that because if I was going to use it for a bracer, I would curve it anyhow. And trick, if you're going to use something like that that's round, or bracer or something like that, while it's wet and using your disposable, so you don't have to wash your hands, curve it as you go. If you have a can, you know, vegetable can or an old can or a jar, okay, you can wrap it around that with some rubber bands while it's still partially wet, and it will take that shape. It makes it a little bit easier for you when you wrap it around your wrist and stuff like that. It's a little shaped like that. And also, too, if you do that before you paint, you're going to have less chance of it showing any cracks or anything like that. Because sometimes, if you take leather,
does anyone still have stuff passing around? Can we just get it to the run?
okay.
Yeah. That
You don't have to.
That's what I want.
One of them, you'll notice that I could stick, and when I bent it, yeah, it did show a little bit of crack, and I just had to re-dye that one part. Because it's a lot thicker than what I thought it was. Not as flexible. Before I dyed it, it was no problem. When I dyed it, it made it a little bit more sticker. And I waited too long before it died. Any other questions?
So if you wanted to wet your leather for any reason, to say you wanted to get it to shrink around something or just to put a stamp in it, would you wet the whole piece at once? Or would you just do one area that you want to stamp?
If you're just going to bend to one area, I did a sheet. Okay, if you're just going to bend to one area, like for example, you're making a sheet or a sword, okay, you would just wet the area you're going to bend, leave the other part flat. Because that'll help keep it from bending there, and then you put weight on it, bring it down. In fact, if you're going to do something like that, just the one area like that, to make like a dagger sheet, something like that that's actually wrapped around something, don't use water. Go to a paint store or a hobby store and get yourself some acetone. Acetone will soften up the leather and it dries within a minute. It's really good. It's air acid. And it works a lot faster than with water. When you dampen it with water, it's going to take about a day and a half before it actually dries.
The leggings on here are plastic, not leather.
I know. It's just as hard as your plastic.
Now, if you got a stamp, that's a totally different thing. Okay. Then you want to use the warm base. Yeah, I would suggest you do that.
Leave it there.
No problem. Okay. We talked about different types and everything. And like I mentioned, to spruce up something, you really don't have to go through a lot of work. For example, this is a purse I got at Goodwill. I took the strap and made these straps like that and put it over. And notice all I did was put some Joshua's on there. And on the back, I riveted 2 straps where I can actually slide a dagger in the back there and tie it in twice. And this is the purse that I use when I use my spurs. Or you can take a plain belt like this, dye it, and you can decorate it, again, something very simple, like gotchas. And you come up with projects like this. Very simple, very, very easy to do. Okay. You're only limited when you do basic lettering by your imagination. Do a little bit of research on how to do that. And also, part of the deal too is deciding if you're going to dye, how you're going to dye. You can use what they call dabbers, like this. You can actually use a sponge. That really gives you a nice cool effect too as well. Or you can use a good old spray bottle. If you don't want to use, don't want to spend a whole lot of time on your project and do it quick, go with the spray bottle. It gives a really light, thin coat on there. It doesn't soak into the leather as much as a dabber or a sponge would. But if you just, it's a quick project, you want to get it done in a hurry, use a sprayer. Works really great.
Just don't touch.
Okay. Now, if there are 2 more. Get all the things, go online, get one of their magazines. It covers everything. It covers different types of tools, leather. They have patterns. They have instructions you can get right off the line there. Each month they have a list of free patterns you can download to do various types of projects. Okay, they always have a lot of stuff on sale. You just look to see what your time frame is for your project, what you actually want to do, and just take a look at the different leather companies that are online and see what's available and if it's affordable in your budget. Okay?
I was just wondering where you would actually go to buy some really nice
Rivets?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going for just what they call pop rivets, it's just 2 pieces just, done together. Okay. Tandy Leather is a really good place. Or again, Leather Factory here in San Jose. Or you can get them online, or a lot of your craft stores have got pop rivets as well.
Michael's, for example.
Huh?
Michael's.
Michael's, believe it or not, Joanne Fabrics. They use rivets and snaps.
Some of their bigger ones.
Okay, now when you really get good with your craft, eventually you're going to wind up being able to do stuff like this.
Look how cool that is. Awesome.
Using 2 different types of leather. Okay. The top here is what is referred to as a mantle, bishop mantle, because it's pretty much straight across. This one here was personally designed for me because I played in the Renaissance. I played the King of Denmark. So I have the royal crest with the 3 blue lions. I left the hearts out because I didn't want to get arrested. Because it's an actual coat of arms that's still being used today, over 400 years. Okay. But the rest of this was, believe it or not, machine stamped. All the following pattern and everything. Because they have to be pressed. And what I did house to kind of spruce up a little bit. Again, I took some Bordelais nachos and just went ahead and punched them and put them on myself. You can always spruce up something, take a plane, you can make it a little bit fancier to your style, something like that, at very easy, low cost. You don't have to go out and spend 30, 40 bucks to make like a belt or a pouch or something like that. You can do it yourself for just a few bucks. You just know a little basic what to do. Okay. All right. We're running out of time. We need to wrap up. If anybody would like to come on up and take a look at the material, please come on forward now. If there are no more questions.
It's much better to be out there running around trying to do each other's walks